Hi, everyone. This is Rico Figliolini, host of UrbanEbb, podcast here in Peachtree Corners, just north of Atlanta. We get to interview a lot of different people, from authors to gamers, politicians, and all that you can think of. I can't even imagine one profession I've left out. Well, maybe there's a few. Um, so we are family friendly, right? I have a special guest today, Sarah Madsen. Hey, Sarah. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Are you kidding? And I love your background, actually. I love the books back there and stuff.
Thank you.
See some of your books back there, yes.
Yeah, mostly RPG books, but yeah, these two are my own novels right here. So,
Oh,
yes.
very nice. I like it. Sarah's a Atlanta-based author, game designer. So, and MomoCon's coming up, right, in May.
Yes.
May
Yes.
21st through the 24th. And you're going to be there, I think,
I
right?
am. Yes, I'm a guest, mostly with the tabletop RPG track. So I'll be on panels for them. So, yes.
Oh, neat. Good. So let's start there, I guess. For those people that may not know what TTRPGs are, they do know Dungeons and Dragons, I would think many people. But so explain to us a little bit about what that is.
Yes, so TTRPG, which is the abbreviation for tabletop role-playing game, is basically for those who are, if you're familiar with anything, you're probably familiar with Dungeons and Dragons because of Stranger Things and everything else.
Right.
It is a game that you play with your friends, usually around a table. There are mechanics that sort of guide you through. If you're trying, I like to call it make believe with rules.
Okay. I
So
like that.
you have somebody who sits at the top of the table, and they are basically setting the stage for your characters. They're saying, "Okay, you're in a tavern, and this guy comes up to you, and and then you say what your character is going to do back. And if you try to do something like, if you're like, you know what, I don't like this guy's tone, I'm going to try to sock him, right? You roll some dice." You
Uh-huh.
add a few numbers to that depending on your character, and then it says whether or not you are successful in what you do. Um, they are a lot of fun. They're really great, like social
Hmm.
activities for groups of friends to do. They can be
Sure.
really fun storytelling. You can go through all of these great adventures and play knights and thieves and rogues, and it's. I love it so much.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And it's all age groups. I mean, I've watched some of
Yes.
the Twitch streams on some of them where there's like a dozen people around a table, and they're
Yep.
doing this, and they're getting right into it. And some of them dress up for the part even. So,
Yes. It depends on what you want to do. Some folks are real casual.
yeah.
Most groups are pretty casual about it. You sit around, you eat snacks, and you hang out and you play. But yeah, especially if you're doing it for an audience on Twitch or on YouTube,
Yeah.
sometimes you get a little more into it and have fancier sets and things. But that's,
Okay.
your normal table isn't going to do that, but it can be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. There are even a local here in like Peachtree Corners, actually more in Johns Creek, I think, some local bookstores or gaming places that in the back they do Dungeons and Dragons. So
Yes.
you can find them everywhere.
Yep. Yep. A lot of your local game stores will have games that run, and some of them, like you said, they have like fancier back rooms that are decorated up a little bit more like a fantasy tavern and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's kind of cool. So it's not just that. So you're involved in that. And in particular, well, let's start there, I guess. In particular, what have you contributed to?
Oh gosh. So I have written for the company Wizards of the Coast, which is the company that does like the real Dungeons and Dragons game. So
Okay.
some of the books I've written for them, one is called Keys from the Golden Vault, which is a book of like fantasy heists. The other one is called Candlekeep Mysteries, which is a bunch of adventures centered around a library. So that's the official Dungeons and Dragons books that I have written for. But there's a lot of other companies that make TTRPGs. In fact, most of the stuff on my shelf here is all
Right.
these other companies. And so I've written for a whole bunch of them. I've written for Kobold Press. I've written for Draco Studios, MCDM, there's so many of them, and I've written for a number of them. So
So what's the biggest challenge when you're writing something like that, content like that? content that's played versus, let's say, just read. So what's the biggest challenge for you to be able to do that?
So the biggest challenge, especially when you're starting out, is if you're writing an adventure. So a lot of what I write is basically a scenario for the dungeon master who runs the table to guide the players through, and it kind of lays out the plot line and the characters that they are going to interact with and things. But when you're writing a novel, you get to say what all the characters are going to do. You get to kind of direct where the plot's going to go. You have complete control over it. When you're writing for something like D&D, you don't know what the people at the table are going to do. And trust me, players, when you play, they will surprise you because people come up with all sorts of crazy ideas of how to try to tackle a problem, right? And so when you're writing, you have to kind of think, okay, what are the main ways that people are going to want to go at that, like want to deal with this problem, or try to get the item that they're trying to get, or try to take down the villain that they're trying to take down. And like, you have to write for that. You have to write for those ideas, like for those potential options, but you can't write for everything, right? And so you have to write enough of the scenario and the situation and the motivations of the other characters that the people at the table aren't playing, so that the dungeon master running the game can kind of make things up, because you're going to have to do that. Sometimes you have to just sort of be like, well, that's not part of the plan in this book, but we're going to run with it, so I'm going to make up my own answer to how that goes. So yeah, it's really tricky because you never know the direction that the players are going to go in. So it can be a challenge, but it's always fun to see what people actually do with that. So
when you're doing that, the amount of freedom you have depends on the publisher, I guess. The process of designing the quest, the world, the characters. How much freedom do you have? Like you said, I mean, you have to be somewhat broad to be able to, set the right place. But how much freedom do you actually have doing that work?
Honestly, I tend to have a lot of freedom. For the most part, when I'm writing things like that, usually there's only, if they give me anything that sometimes they're saying, we want you to write an adventure. Pitch something to us, make it up. We don't know what we want you to write. Tell us what you want to write. Sometimes it's like, we need an adventure like Keys from the Golden Vault. We have heists. We need a heist adventure. Pitch us a heist adventure. Or sometimes they come to you and they say, we need this specific plot written. Can you write this? But even in that situation, there's still a lot of wiggle room as far as like making up characters or the details of things. It also depends on how long the adventure is, page count wise, word count wise, right? If I'm writing something that's 3,000 words long, it's really tight and you don't have a lot of room, versus something that's like 10,000 words or bigger than that.
How many words do you average then for something like this?
Oh gosh. So most of the adventures, if it's what we call a one-shot adventure, which is something that you can usually play in one gaming session, which is like 4 to 6 hours. It's like 9 or 10,000 words long. But I've written up to like a 40,000 word adventure for somebody, which that's a whole bunch of things all chained together, and it's this big, goes across several cities, and so it can get pretty wild. It's all
I'm wondering about that, how that would go like that. Do you ever play any of those games, like, or I don't know, attend or play? Have you tried?
So so do you mean the ones I've written, or just playing in general?
Playing in general, but even the ones that you've written would be interesting. Like, you're in the midst of it, you're seeing it being played, and there must be things going on in your head saying, damn, I didn't think of it that way, or whatever. I mean, do you feel that?
Yes. So I play a lot. I play in several different weekly D&D games. So I play a Tuesday night D&D game. I play in a Friday night D&D game.
Oh wow! Okay.
I run one that plays every month. And so I play in a bunch, and it's a lot of fun. I have not played well, okay. I have played one adventure that I have written. Like, I've run adventures that I've written, so I'm the one with the book in charge of the things that how things go.
Okay.
But one time, pretty like, my Tuesday night game, my dungeon master, we had a heist at a casino. And we're going into it, and I'm
Why
like,
not? Sure.
this sounds. I think this is my adventure. Like, I think this is the one I've written. And then I finally realized this was. But the joy of it is, it's like I was able to be like, I don't know what's going on, you guys. It's a mystery. And then he changed up enough of the details that like I was able to explore it in a way that was still fun for me, rather than knowing what was behind every door. Right.
Wow. Okay.
So that was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah, that's a whole different way of looking at something.
Yep.
Yeah. There are actors that don't want to see the movies they've been in, or writers that will not go, will not read their book after it's printed and stuff. And why would they? Because I think most creative people, do you find, I publish several magazines, and I have an editor that works with me, and there's a couple of other publications I do, and there's editors there. But there's one particular editor that she can't let it go. She needs to look at it. And I'm like, you know what? Deadline's coming up. I got to let loose at 5 p.m. This has got to go. Do you find yourself like that? Like where you want to just keep fine tuning what you're doing? So,
yes, but also I've been a freelancer for several years now, to the point that I'm like, I understand. You have a deadline, like you said, you got a deadline. Like, it's got to be done, and you got to, like, because you could sit there and fiddle with it forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. But at some point, you have to be like, okay, right, this is what I got. I'm going to turn it over. It's good. Like, it's fine. Like, it's okay. I could sit here and mess with it, but really, it's fine. It is good. It can go, and whether or not it's fine, it's got to go, because I got a deadline. So yeah.
How long have you been in the business, Sarah?
I believe I started my first, I think 8 years, maybe a little longer, when I very first started doing some freelance projects. But I was working a day job at the time. I was just doing it like on the nights or weekends, kind of dabbling in it, just making, having a little fun, making a little extra money on the side, nothing exciting. But I've been full-time freelance for... Oh my goodness. Okay, maybe it's been longer than 8 years, because I went full-time freelance in 2020, because it was a year into the COVID pandemic when I went full-time freelance. So, but time has no meaning anymore.
Then it's worked out well for you, I imagine, right?
It has. It's been really great, actually. Yeah.
That's cool. So getting from Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop, getting into video game writing, maybe a whole different way. I mean, that's like, to some degree, there's definitely a certain amount of interactivity in that versus a linear storyline. I just started playing, because my youngest son, Elden Ring, and it's just like interacting with the characters. It's just interesting. I can't wait for NPCs to be able to actually think on their own, maybe at some point. But how does that work? Video game writing, the stuff that you do. You've written for Necromancer's Tale and Ages of Kataria.
Yes.
How does that feel? I mean, getting into that, I'm assuming that came after maybe the tabletop. It
did. Necromancer's Tale was just 3 years ago, I think, something like that. Ages of Kataria was just late last year. It is, again, a really more storytelling, right? So Ages of Kataria is a cozy village builder sim. So you're basically, you play villagers and you're building up your town, and you're you're growing your food, and you're forming relationships between the various villagers. And what I wrote for that was, you'd have little like story events that pop up, because most of the time your villagers are just running around doing their thing, and every once in a while a little event would happen, like you would be a villagers fishing and they catch a weird fish, and what do they do with it? Like, so there's a couple of little choices that you can make in there, and that kind of either gives you more fish, or maybe it gives you a little bit of luck for later. So those are like shorter, little, like one-off things.
Yeah.
The Necromancer's Tale was is a Gothic role-playing game, but it's a computer role-playing game instead of a tabletop role-playing game, so you're playing on a computer. The trick with that is it's almost the opposite of where you're playing a TTRPG. When you're playing D&D or whatever, the players can do whatever they want.
Right.
As long as the dice go along with them, right?
Right.
Whereas a video game, you have to narrow your scope a lot more because there's only so much room in a game for things, unless because we can't all be these huge Baldur's Gate 3 games where you have a gazillion options.
For sure.
And you have the limitations of the game engine, the coding and things that it uses, that you can only necessarily do certain things. So that one was a lot of fun.
So you had to take all that into account. I mean, it's just, do you get like a bit of storyboarding to some degree? Do you get any creative direction from the developer?
With both of those games, neither of them were very cinematic, so I didn't have storyboarding per se. But I had, when I came on board with the Necromancer's Tale, they had the main plot written out. Okay. They had a lot of it, not the whole plot wasn't completed, but they had it plotted, so they knew the direction things were going to go.
Okay.
In some cases, I took on like a small side quest where it was like I had 1 or 2 points of like the player needs to meet this character, and one of the things they need to do is they're going to find out that he's building a Frankenstein-like monster in his basement, and what are they going to do with that? Okay. And so I had a lot of freedom about like what else to do and how to let the player run through that scenario. But in other cases, I was able to come up with entire little side plots on my own. Just be like, it'd be fun to have this and add it in. But you also have to be careful with that because you don't want the game to scope creep, right? Yeah. Where you end up big and then you're running up on deadlines and you haven't finished what you need to finish. But yeah.
You got to control yourself then, yes.
Yeah.
Anything surprising there that you want to share that you found, that you learned from it, that someone might not realize, like not know because they're not in inside baseball, I guess it would be.
Yeah. So, I think for me, the most interesting thing, so both The Necromancer's Tale and Ages of Cateria, they used different game engines. They used different systems how they implemented. And so learning a little, so with Ages of Cateria, you learned a little bit of Unreal Engine 5, right? So it's the system and how they put it into the game. And so just learning those little details of like, this is what I can and can't do, because it's like the little finicky bits of the coding and the way that the game works it was really interesting. So
interesting. So now let's talk about your books, because your books you have total control over.
Yes.
Right. Well, to a degree, right? You have editors, maybe. Yep. So maybe not total control. But so let's talk about, I guess, maybe Weaver's Folly, cyberpunk. Urban fantasy set near future here in Atlanta, actually. Yes. So I read part of the synopsis on a very interesting story. So tell us give us the blurb of what you want to share on this story, and then we'll get a little bit into it.
So normally I say Weaver's Folly. It's a cyberpunky urban fantasy set in near future Atlanta. The main character is an elf with magic that rides a motorcycle. And she is what's called a runner. She goes out and steals things, usually from like mega corporations. If anybody listening to this is familiar with the Shadowrun TTRPG, it's kind of the same vibe. And she meets up with another runner who they actually get assigned to the same job, and he basically steals the item out from underneath her, and then offers to bring her in later on a bigger job. and then things start going horribly wrong. So
As it does in a novel,
as
yes.
it does.
And she's running for her life.
Yes.
People are chasing after her. So when you're doing that, I mean, I've spoken to a lot of different writers. I've spoken to Gothic writers, writers of fiction that's not fancy or anything sci-fi or anything like that. Everyone has a process, right? Of course, some of it comes from your own life, maybe a little bit, obviously. That you're a cyberpunk fancy person, but the stories have to come from a space that you have, I guess, that creative space. So how do you come up with these stories? How do you world build? How easy is that for you? Or is that difficult? I mean, world building, I mean, just to keep it consistent and large enough, I guess, to keep interesting. How does that work with you?
Man, I wish I had an easy answer for that. So my stories, a lot of times they start with the characters. So I have an idea for a character who's in a situation, and then they sort of spiral out from there. So the world is sort of built. I have some world building that I do when I start, but the world sort of gets built along with the telling of the story. At least when I'm writing first draft, I'm very much the kind of writer that I discover things as I'm writing. I'm not like we used to call it plotters and pantsers, right? Where some people sit down, they have the whole plot figured out, and other people go by the seat of their pants. I think the new terms are architects and gardeners, right? You build something and you have your plan versus a gardener where you put stuff in the ground and you sort of weed and you kind of mess with it a little bit. I'm very much of the pantser / gardener variety where I'm telling the story to myself the first time I'm writing it, as well as to the reader. So a lot of my second and third and however many other revisions I do is going back and stitching back together the things, because a lot of times I'll be like, oh, I got to the third part of my book and I just realized that this thing is going to happen, but I need to make sure I go back and seed the hints for that earlier, so it doesn't just seem like
stuff like that.
Yeah. Like I make sure I put the Chekhov's gun on the mantelpiece, right? if I need it here. So
Okay, so do you at least know where the end is, or are you going for a real ride and you don't know where this is going to end?
No, usually when I'm finally ready to write the book, it's usually because I know the inciting incident, right? Well, I know the characters. I know what kicks the story off, the inciting incident, the thing that pulls the characters into the plot. I know that. And then I need to know the end. I need to know where I'm aiming for. So I usually know, and the stuff in the middle could just be this giant cloud of darkness that I have to sort of light my way through the flashlight, right? So yeah, knowing those parts, and oftentimes I'll have a few other very vivid scenes in my head that will come to me, or I'll figure out, I'm like, I know that one. Like when I wrote Weaver's Folly, I definitely wrote it in chunks, like here and then a scene that happened in several chapters down, and then figuring out how I'm getting my character from point A to B to C to D was the real challenge for me, was the filling out all the other stuff, like what's happening between these moments that is getting them to that point.
Is that tougher to do that part than those big scenes like that?
Yeah, it is for me. Because a lot of times those big scenes are like the big emotional or big plot points that sort of come to me pretty early on in the process. And so I get really excited about those and I know exactly what they're going to look like. And then, the rest, the quieter stuff, the in-between bits can be more challenging for me personally. So
I was listening to your playlist earlier before you showed up. And I know some writers like to listen to playlists, and everyone's a little different. And we'll share a link to the playlist that you had. I think it was for Weaver's Folly, or is this for?
It's for When the Stars Bleed.
When the Stars Bleed, right?
probably, I think. Yeah,
Yes,
which is
When
my
the
most
Stars
recent
Bleed.
one. That one right there.
Yep. And it's on Spotify, so people can find it. 32 songs, 2 hours, 15 minutes, probably loops in there somewhere, I bet.
Mhm.
So I mean, do you actually, you listen to it as you're writing and stuff?
So when I'm actually writing, I can't listen to anything with words because
Okay.
that distracts me. So
Right.
I do a lot of video game soundtracks or show or movie soundtracks. I find are a lot of stuff that's really fun to listen to because it's meant to be in the background, right? It's
Yes,
meant to
yes.
give you the vibes, but not.
Instrumentals and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But the playlists I build them sort of as I'm writing the book. I'll be listening to other things and just sort of, going about my day. And I'm like, oh no, like that's a good song for this character or for this specific moment. And it's songs that sort of evoke specific characters or moments or feelings that really tie into the book for me. And I listen to that in the car or in the shower or when I'm making dinner and it kind of helps me keep that writing happening in the back of my
Yeah.
head even when
Yeah.
I'm not at the computer,
I
because
like
that's when
that.
a lot of my like plot breakthroughs happen, is not when I'm sitting at the computer. It's when I'm letting myself do other things and
Yeah.
it sort of gets worked out in the back of my
So
brain.
it's a
So
process. Is there a favorite song out of that playlist or that keep repeating in your playlists?
so that one, a lot of these the playlists that I make, I don't make them. I probably could have weeded it down a little bit so that there wasn't quite as many
That's kind of
songs
cool.
because there's a lot. But I really make it for myself more than anything, and so I thought it would just be fun for other people to see. And I'm trying to pull up my When the Stars Bleed so that I can see
That's all right.
if
I mean,
there's a favorite.
Too much is never enough.
Yeah, the first one, the second one. So Sometimes by Garbage.
Yeah.
Was kind of a big one for me. Oh, and also Amends by Garbage, that's on there. Those are two like good ones that are like really sort of zoom in on some major like character moments from the main character.
Okay. That's neat. Good. If you don't mind me asking, do you use any particular software when you're writing? Or is it just
yes. So I use Scrivener when I'm drafting.
Okay. Interesting.
And then when I'm revising, usually I just use Microsoft Word because that puts the whole thing in one big document.
Yeah,
so but when I'm writing and I'm having to bounce around a lot, having Scrivener, because you can divide it out by scenes and chapters on the side, so it's easier to sort of, and you can move things.
Put your notes in there and stuff.
Yep, and pictures and all sorts of stuff, but you can also like move chunks around. So if I'm like, how this scene really needs to be here, I can just drag the document instead of like cutting and pasting, because things get lost when you cut and paste.
Yeah, cool. So when the Stars Bleed is your latest book. It's a space opera.
Yes, space opera.
Away from Atlanta, going to space.
Yeah,
and that one actually, I read the blurb also, and that sounded like that's fun. A fun story to read also. Tell us a bit about that story and how, what it's about and how you came to want to write that.
So the basic idea for the story is the main character was a war hero, had something happen and she became sort of disgraced and kicked out and ran off to this little tiny space station in the middle of nowhere to sort of hide from her past and her problems. And then her former commander comes back to her and says, hey, we need your help. War is on the horizon again. We need you to come take a small group and go find somebody important and deal with it. And it's all very vague for a reason. They're very much like, we want deniability, and
sure.
And she's got no job and a drug habit, and she has just pissed off the local crime boss on the space station. And so she's like, you know what? That sounds good. Let's go right now.
Motivation to leave.
Yes. So it is that story. And of course, as she's going along, she's uncovering more and more. And it turns out to be way more complicated than she was expecting at the get-go. Wow. And I actually, I was inspired to write that originally because I played the Mass Effect video game trilogy for the first time, which is a military space opera role-playing game with lots of really good story and good characters and really heartbreaking plot. And so I was sort of in like the outer space mindset. Right. And I was driving one day and sort of just the prologue for that came to me. And then I was like, well, now I need to figure out what this is about. It was one of those times that actually the prologue came to me before anything else. And it's only like a couple, it's less than a page. And it definitely, like, I came up with the prologue and then I was like, well, now I need to actually figure out what the rest of the story is. So that's what I did. So, yeah.
Does the title come with the prologue or does the title come later?
Title comes later.
Does it? Okay. It's a great title. I love that title.
Thank you.
So writing, you got a diverse background, Sarah. And it's kind of fun. It's like gig working in a variety of different ways, right?
Yes, it is.
the modern gig worker. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of cross-discipline insights that you probably gathered along the way, working between games, writing novels, and all that stuff. Is there, storytelling is storytelling, right? I guess almost doesn't matter where you're going and what format you're in. It's still it's about the story. Movies suck sometimes just because the story is bad. But when they're into millions of dollars into it, and they realize in the editing room that this is bad and they can't shoot any more stuff, you're just stuck with whatever story is going to come out. But writing a novel is different, right? If you talk about doing drafts. How many drafts have you ever had to go through for a book? I mean,
oh gosh, well, so I only have the 2 published. I have several others that I've written that have not gone anywhere for multiple reasons or partially written. Weaver's Folly didn't get a ton of revisions.
Okay.
That one was, once it was done. So that one only really, I have the first draft and then the second draft. And I think maybe I probably had a third draft once I got it with a publisher that had a few points that needed attention, but it wasn't a huge change, right? It was just little bits that needed to be fixed. When the Stars Bleed definitely changed a bunch. There were whole, like, sections that got pulled out, whole parts that got pulled in. There's an epilogue that I completely changed the way the ending was from the original. It just because it wasn't satisfying to me the way I had left it originally. There were I felt like too many threads that weren't left tied up, because you don't have to tie up every thread. You can leave some for the future if you want to do more. But it felt like there were too many things, and I'm like, no, she wouldn't, like, the character wouldn't just leave that hanging there. She would deal with that. And I felt like the reader probably also wanted to see the resolution to some certain things. So I put in a whole different ending from originally. So it didn't have, also not a ton of drafts, but a lot of changes between drafts for that one. So.
All right, cool. So we've covered a lot. And we're actually coming to the end of our time together, Sarah. And I've learned a lot about what you do in your business, which is cool. I mean, I always find these interviews interesting because there's so many different disciplines and way people do things. So hearing you talk about your craft and how you do what you do, it's exciting because there are plenty of people that want to do this stuff, but really to finish it and actually get it published, whole different story.
Yeah.
Right? Feel accomplished, don't you?
I do, actually. Thank you.
Is there anything that you want to share with us that maybe I didn't cover that you think our listeners might want to hear or stuff?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I feel like we hit a lot of stuff today, so I'm sure people have questions, but yeah, you can find me online, so hit me up.
Yeah. Where can they find you? So tell us. And I'll have links, but
okay. My website is unfetteredmuse.com, and when you can see a full list of everything I've written for on there, and I usually update that with like when I'm going to be at conventions, and any big news I'll update that with. I'm also mostly active. I have a Facebook page, but I don't use it a ton. I'm pretty active on Blue Sky under Unfettered Muse and Instagram under Unfettered. So if you want to keep up with me on social media, that's the best place to do it. So, and those links are on my website. So if you're not sure, you'll find me there.
Sounds good. Do you have anything that you're working on now that you'd like to share, or another book or another?
I have another book I'm working on, but it's still in the draft phases. So with that one, no, I don't want to talk about it yet. We'll see. I got to see where it ends up first.
All right, sounds good. So we've been talking to Sarah Madsen. She's an Atlanta-based author and game designer. Love spending the time together with you, Sarah. Appreciate you being with me. And you can find her at MomoCon, May 21st through the 24th. At the Georgia World Conference Center here in Atlanta. It's going to be bigger and better than even the year before. So there's a lot more stuff going on. In fact, it sandwiches, I believe, DreamHack Atlanta and MomoCon that week, 2 weekends, and it's Georgia Game Week or something. So there's lots going on. So
a lot.
So hang in there with me. But everyone else, thank you for joining us. If you have any comments, certainly follow Sarah on her social media. Visit her website, unfetteredmuse.com. And thank you for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.